In a moment marked by deep polarization, rising censorship, and attacks on historically marginalized communities, we at the Dayton Metro Library reaffirm our commitment to truth, justice, and belonging. We are committed to ensuring that all individuals have a place to be heard, seen, and celebrated. The Social Justice Speaker Series is one way we live and breathe that commitment by bringing together world-class authors, cultural organizers, scholars, activists, and visionaries. We create space for the kind of courageous conversations that libraries, at their core, were always meant to uphold. Tonight, let us listen with open minds. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Now, to introduce our moderator for this evening. Sharon D. White currently serves as the Strategic Communications Advisor for Premier Health. Prior, she served as Premier's System Director of External Relations for over 10 years. She is a professional with over 25 years of experience in broadcast media and community and public relations. White is affiliated with numerous civic and volunteer organizations, including a member of the University of Dayton Board of Trustees and president of the UD National Alumni Association. Additionally, she is a board and founding member of the Dayton Area Broadcasters Hall of Fame, Greater Dayton Regional Transit Authority Board of Trustees, the Board of Directors of the Neon, and the NCAA Men's Basketball First Four Local Organizing Committee. White has been recognized for her journalistic work by receiving the Regional Communicator of the Year Award by the International Communications Training Institute and multiple National Communicator and Tele Awards. Her work in the community has garnered several recognitions, including Miami Valley Urban League Pillar Award in 2023. Please give me a warm welcome for tonight's moderator, Ms. Sharon D. White.
Hi, family. Y'all can do better than that. Hello. Hello. It's so happy to see. Hi, Marcia. It's so nice to look out and see friends. First, let me just say, Carlos, you didn't even know how much you helped me this evening. Thank you for the pink chairs. I had to go to the Go Red for Women luncheon today, and as an Alpha Kappa Alpha woman, wearing red makes me a little itchy. So the fact that you have pink chairs makes me happy. Isn't that right, sorors? Yes, thank you. All right, so we got a few ground rules, but before we get started, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I know that you probably have lots of demands for your time, so the fact that you came here this evening is a blessing. So let me just introduce you to our speaker, because she becomes the perfect person to kick off this speaker series. First of all, let me go back. Let me thank Carlos. Thank Carlos. And let me tell you why. At a time when I never thought I'd live to see the word diversity be bad, in a world where you sometimes feel like diversity and inclusion is a bad thing, where organizations have abandoned this work, I think we should thank the Dayton Metro Library for continuing with this series.
If I could just make one remark about this.
I'm sorry?
If I can make one remark about this. So just one thing really quickly. We will have a Q&A period at the end of today. We have a note card here. We have multiple staff members that if you raise your hand, if you want to have a question considered for the Q&A, you could just write it here. and then just raise your hand and we'll come collect.
I'm laughing because we haven't even started, and Marsha's like, I need a card. We have someone, the lady in green, who matches the pink chairs. All right, so, I want to tell you, just give you a little information about the speaker series. Carlos didn't do it justice. It is comprised of unique, award-winning, and professional speakers, each discussing some of the most critical social justice issues of today, providing insights from their professional fields and personal journeys. I am excited and honored to serve as your moderator this evening as we commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Montgomery Bus Boycott. This unforgettable and thought-provoking evening features the Karen Gray Houston as she reflects on her family's legacy in the movement that changed the nation. I had the pleasure of meeting with tonight's speakers a couple weeks ago, and you are in for a real treat this evening. Karen Gray Houston is the author of highly acclaimed debut memoir, Daughter of the Boycott, Carrying on a Montgomery Family's Civil Rights Legacy. It tells the story of her family's involvement in the historic 1955 Montgomery Bus Boycott. On the front lines of what became the Montgomery Bus Boycott, Houston's father, Thomas Gray, withstood threats and bombings along with his brother, Fred D. Gray. Fred was a young lawyer who represented Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and the rarely mentioned Claudette Colvin, a plaintiff in the case that forced Alabama to desegregate its buses. We will also honor the life and the legacy of Claudette Colvin, who joined the ancestors on January 13th. Karen was born in Montgomery, Alabama, but raised in Cleveland, Ohio. She is an award-winning broadcast journalist, retired after 41 years as a news reporter and anchor at radio and television stations and networks in Boston, New York City, and Washington, D.C. She graduated cum laude from Ohio University with a bachelor's degree in psychology in 1972 and has a master's degree in journalism from Columbia University. Karen will answer some very targeted questions that I have for her, but as we said earlier, we don't want to present an evening where we're just talking at you. We want people engaged. Now, I know my African American brothers and sisters, you know how we do when we're in church. We hear something we like, we just, what do we say? Dare you, you are right on time. Amen. So we want you engaged, and so please participate with the index cards so that we can answer your questions. Karen is here. She's going to be here, so we may as well put her to work. So without further ado, please welcome Karen to the stage.
Are these pink or purple?
I'm calling them pink, Karen. Don't start. You starting trouble, and you just got here. I just have to tell you, Karen and I told you we spoke a couple of weeks ago, and the day that Carlos and I had our meeting, there were 13 inches of snow on the ground. Look at God. It's 66 degrees.
I can't imagine how this happened.
It was you.
I was walking outside in my shirt sleeves this morning.
I know. Did you love it?
I loved it.
Okay. So you don't mind me getting right to work.
Let's do it.
Okay. So let's begin at the beginning. 1955, a year most of us read about, heard about. That's when we still got all the news. Briefly set the stage as to what was happening in Montgomery and how your father and uncle got involved.
All right. In 1955, I was 4 years old. I was 4 years old when the boycott happened. Where do we begin? I'm going to start it in 1950.
Okay.
Because in 1950, there was a black man named Hilliard Brooks, and he was a World War II veteran. He was trying to get a ride on a bus in downtown Montgomery, and he was shot and killed by a white policeman. This is a story most people don't know about because they think it all started, that the civil rights movement got kick-started by the boycott in 1955. Okay, Hilliard Brooks was a friend of my dad, who was also a World War II veteran, Thomas Gray. He found out about it and was outraged, but let me just tell you how it happened. The guy was, okay, circumstances can be a little tricky. He was drunk and disorderly. Doesn't mean the police officer had a right to kill him. A bus driver summoned a police officer, to deal with the disorderly conduct issue. And when he got there, and it's not clear exactly if the shooting happened on the bus or on the sidewalk, but he was killed. He didn't die right then, he died later at the hospital, but when my father found out about it, he flew into a rage. He and Hilliard Brooks had been friends. They played street football as kids, and my dad and an AMVETS commander, they were teaching veterans at the local high school, Catholic high school, and they wanted to know what they could do because they said, we can't let this guy get away with murder like that. So they wrote a nice little letter to city officials, to the mayor. They wrote to the police commissioner, City Hall. We want this white police officer prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. What happened? Exactly. So they decided that they were going to organize a big veterans protest. They got hundreds of veterans to march downtown. They carried these signs that said, ballots will beat bullets. So they didn't want to loiter and be arrested. So they marched to the local courthouse where you could get registered to vote. And that day, well, the march went on for several days. Hundreds of veterans registered, 300 of them registered to vote at a time when there weren't a lot of black people registered to vote. This was on people's minds 5 years later when they were upset about segregation. It wasn't just, I'm mad because I have to sit in the back of the bus. I'm upset because segregation is permeating everything I do in my existence. I can't go to restaurants with white people or schools or churches. I can't drink from the same water fountain. And so they were outraged and they wanted to do something about it. I want to say, where did we go from there? People think that everything started with Rosa Parks. 15-year-old Claudette Colvin, 9 months before Rosa Parks, refused to get up and give her seat to a white passenger. Because it was like March the 2nd, 1955, right after Black History. It was a week back then. They only gave us a week. And she was on the bus, it got crowded, and the bus driver turned around and said, I need a seat. And little Claudette was like, I'm not getting up. Couple of people in the rows beside her did get up. Somebody seated next to her and the other two people, because white people won't sit in a seat in the same row as with black people. And the other people got up and Claudette said, I'm gonna stay here. So the bus driver summoned a police officer. Long story short, a couple of cops got on the bus, went over to Claudette, knocked her books out of her lap and dragged her off the bus. Put her in jail, and not like juvenile detention center. They put her in an adult jail. So what was going to happen after that? She became Fred Gray's, my uncle. He was, young, just fell out of law school is the way I like to describe it. Just came from law school in Ohio, had his degree. 6 months later, this is his first civil rights case. And so people were trying to get behind Claudette, and there had been talk about having a boycott. But they didn't have it for Claudette because during that summer, she got pregnant. And they didn't want the face of their challenge of segregation to be an unwed teenage mother. So that's what happened with poor little Claudette. But imagine the bravery of a young 15-year-old girl. I'm thinking, what would I do? What would I have done if they had told me, get out of my seat?
But you talk about bravery for her. I'm thinking about bravery of your uncle, because you said he just got out of law school. I mean, he could have picked a different case that probably wouldn't have been as big or important. The bravery of how old would he have been?
He was 23.
23. So he's a baby. He's a baby.
Well, think about it. In most of the big protest movements that we've had in our time, the people at the helm tend to be young people. They tend to be people in their 20s and their 30s because they have the time, and they also are driven. They have a sense of urgency about, I want to make things better for me. And they're willing to take more bold, new approaches to social change.
But the thing that I think is interesting, if you could speak to, as it relates to your uncle, is the vision about using the law to try to win. How does that change everything that happened going forward?
Now, a lot of people think that the 382 days that they had the boycott, that's what got them over the hurdle. I think it probably did send a message to lawmakers and to Supreme Court justices. They probably had their eye on. The world was watching what was going on in Montgomery. But my uncle says to this day, it was the law that made the change. It was the fact that he filed and this was not the Rosa Parks case. This was Aurelia versus Browder versus Gale. Aurelia Browder versus Gale. This was the case that turned the tide because it went through the federal courts. Rosa Parks' case was a disorderly conduct case that was moving its way through local courts. And he wanted to jump over the heads of the local people, white supremacists in Montgomery, Alabama, and deal with the federal courts. And so after Claudette, there were some other women who also refused to give up their seats and who were arrested. Aurelia Browder, Susie McDonald, Mary Louise Smith, and they became the plaintiffs in the case that went to the Supreme Court that actually overturned busing, segregated busing. And the funny thing about some of the, Aurelia, and her kids told me this, her sons, they didn't want Aurelia to be the one to put the boycott behind because she was kind of a loud lady, and she was too dark-skinned. I'm just saying,
really?
Too dark-skinned is what her son said.
Really? And
then there was Susie McDonald. Susie was a white woman. Susie used to sit in the white section, and it was like I look white, and it angered the bus drivers that she was doing that. So that was another person. It's like, are we going to make her the person? Well, no, maybe we. And little Mary Louise Smith was 18 years old. Her dad, the rumor was that her father was an alcoholic. So they were looking for the right person to be the face of a boycott. And then 9 months after Claudette, there was Rosa Parks.
Rosa Parks. Well, we talked about your father and your uncle, but after talking to you, it became apparent to me that the piece that really is the powerful piece is the power of a whole group of ordinary people who have this focused initiative of everybody coming together. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. And you said most of the people in the movement were in their early 20s. So as you look at that time, and even with things happening today, talk a little bit about the power of ordinary people.
Community, it was all about community. And who says it? Extraordinary results can stem from the actions of ordinary people. And these were just ordinary people who said, hey, we're going to do something. And let's throw in also the power of women. Joanne Robinson and Mary Fair Burks were these two professors at Alabama State College. It was Alabama State College for Negroes back then. And they were members, they headed up a group called the Women's Political Council. and they were as radical as any of the men's political groups. And you know, women, when they get a bug up there, but they want to get something done. So they would start, here's what they did, and I found this out from Martin Luther King's barber. He was in one of their classes. He was in an English class, and he said, you know, they would have us go out on the buses and take a notepad and take notes about the drivers who were doing these horrible things. Here's what would happen. You put your little dime fare in the fare box, and if the bus driver decides that, you know, there are too many white people in the front, they don't want you to walk past them, he can tell you to get off the bus, go around to the side, and get on in the back. That was infuriating. Also, what would sometimes happen is that the bus drivers, when you got off the bus, they would drive off. So that leaves you waiting for the other bus. You're going to be late for your job. You're going to be late to work. You know, it's just a bad experience for everybody. Well, Joanne Robinson and Mary Fair Burks had people had kids, students getting on the buses, taking names and the numbers of the buses. And they started meeting with the city officials and officials with the City Lines Bus Company to ask for better treatment for black people. So that was going on. The NAACP, you know, E.D. Nixon, he was looking at other cities that had bus boycotts, like in Mobile, and where was another place? There was another city that had a bus boycott that wasn't really very successful and didn't get a lot of attention. Rosa Parks was not the little old lady who was just, you know, a seamstress who was tired on the bus the day that she was arrested. Rosa Parks was an activist. Rosa Parks worked for E.D. Nixon at the NAACP. She was the chair of the Youth Council, and she was an activist and an investigator. They sent her down to Abbeville, Alabama, after 6 white men raped a black woman down there, to find out what was going on and see if she could get some help for the woman's name was Reese Taylor. So this is kind of the background that Rosa Parks was coming from. She was E.D. Nixon was involved with voter campaigns, progressive Democrats, the NAACP. She was taking notes, and she was involved in all of that. And then when my uncle came to town, the new lawyer, he was the second black lawyer in Montgomery, he met her at the NAACP meetings because he was my uncle was on a mission. He was going to get out of law school, go down to Alabama, and destroy everything segregated he could find. And so he and Rosa Parks were kindred spirits. They both hated segregation with a passion and wanted to do something. So they started meeting for lunch at his offices. She worked at the department store downtown, and his law office was down the street and around the corner. And at lunchtime, they would sit around and talk about, how are you going to do this? What would happen if a bus driver, if you have another bad experience on a bus? Because once same bus driver on the bus she was arrested on once told her not to walk down the middle of the aisle to get off and go into the back. And she got off the bus and she looked at the bus driver and she said, I'm not even going to get on that bus. So she was already ticked off.
You talking, I mean, there was a lot of planning.
Everything was going on.
All these little backstories of this focused plan. You mentioned how much women were involved in this, and I have to ask you, I have to put you on the spot. You should never tell me anything. Because I keep notes. As the kids say, I keep receipts.
Okay.
So you have to tell them the story you told us on the call, and y'all gonna laugh. And all I'm gonna tell you is about pound cake and how pound cake was a part of this movement. You remember that story?
I don't remember telling you that, but was it the lady, the Gilmore
woman
lady?
The woman that was a part of the boycott.
Gilmore is her last name, and now I'm blocking on her first name, but she was feeding, Martin Luther King and everybody else, when they were having their meetings. People needed to get fed, and then they also needed places to meet.
But you talked about how people were judging her because she wasn't necessarily marching or she was just down there handing out pound cake.
Everybody has a role to play.
Thank you.
And, you know,
Thank you.
You may not be able to contribute that way. You may not be a marcher.
Right.
You may, and my uncle, people would say, hey, Fred Gray, how come you're not out there marching? And he says, I'm the lawyer. I got to bail the people out of jail.
That's right.
So, yeah.
All of that is to say everybody can play a role.
My dad was out there driving his car. Well, I backtrack a little bit. There was a group called the Montgomery Improvement Association that was formed when they decided they were going to have a boycott. And a lot of ministers were involved in that group. And my dad was a member of the founding board of the MIA. They planned a massive carpool operation because they had to figure out if we're going to have a boycott. And the first day was really successful. They decided, it was such a success. We're drafting Martin Luther King. He's going to be the leader. And we're going to have a boycott that's going to last longer than a day. So it ended up being 382 days, and so to get people to their jobs, you had to figure out how you're going to get to work. People were very dependent on the buses. It was a time when most people didn't have cars, or, if your family had a car, they had one car. My dad was a businessman. He sold radio and TV sets and repaired appliances and things like that. And he had a car, and he drove his car to pick up passengers so that they would stay off of the buses and to make the boycott a success. So a lot of people were doing that. And then they were thinking, well, how else can we get people to work? Well, we can use taxis, and the taxis would charge you what the bus fare was, so you could get a taxi for a dime. And they used funeral cars. It's like wherever we can find a car, we're going to get one, and the boycott, the first day, it was like 90% successful. That's when they knew that they could do this. But that went on for 382 days. And the police harassed them. I mean, my dad was followed by the cops and stopped one day, and
what they call profiling today.
They didn't. It was kind of like, you got a bunch of people in your car. Where you going? Let me see your driver's license.
Okay. Are you filling out your index cards? Y'all don't think Karen's gonna do all the work? Fill out your index cards. Raise them up in the air if you have a question already written out, and they'll come and grab them for Carlos. If you have a question already written, just raise your hand, and they'll come get it. Karen, I'm listening to your story, and I'm listening.
This is their story.
You're right, but you are kind of like our teacher today. And when I hear all the things that different people did, from carpooling and feeding people, I think about that quote from Martin Luther King about how everyone can serve. And sometimes people think, well, I'm not a big shot, or I'm not this. But I also, sitting here tonight listening to you, I also think about how history repeats itself. Because, I'm watching the news with everything that's happening in Minneapolis, and these people decided we're going to help our neighbors. They were getting food for immigrants and taking it to them because they couldn't leave their house. They're marching. They kind of took their city back from ICE agents, and it's just interesting how history always repeats itself.
We can learn a lesson from history, and what the bus boycott did was leave a blueprint for the protesters and demonstrators who followed after that. Gave courage to people to do the sit-ins at the lunch counters, and to stand up to dogs and hoses in Birmingham, and so forth and so on. Also, a big lesson from Martin Luther King was, this is going to be a nonviolent protest. This is going to be peaceful. And here's the thing. Some people think, everybody was not on board with the turn the other cheek thing. My dad even had seen an article early on in the boycott where they were quoting King saying this is going to be a nonviolent protest, and colored people are going to turn the other cheek to violence. And my father said, well, what a brilliant media ploy. And And he said, no, Brother Gray, no, not a ploy. This has got to be nonviolent. Or, you know, that it's got to be nonviolent.
Did your dad, do you ever remember any stories that they told you or family members from your dad or your uncle where they really talked about the energy to keep going when things didn't happen instantly?
Because I was 4.
I said that. I just said, did they tell you the story?
They wove us a little cocoon. They wove a little cocoon around us, and I found out about a lot of these things as an adult. Really, I mean, I met Rosa Parks when I was a young child, and I wasn't smart enough to know to ask her questions about.
Well, you were teeny.
I was young, and so you don't learn those things. But back to Martin Luther King and the fact that he wanted the protest to be peaceful. That's what worked for those folks in Minneapolis. They went out to stage peaceful protests. Same thing with the lunch counter folks. It's like, we're not going to get up. If they don't serve us, we're not going to move. The feeling was, and King was heavily influenced by Mahatma Gandhi, and they felt that peaceful protests leave you on the right side of history. It gives you the moral high ground. And so it apparently worked out in Minneapolis because the border czar came and he said, well, I'm going to let 700 people go, and now he's pulling back the ice. Apparently they're pulling back the entire campaign.
2 murders will kind of do that.
Yeah. You would think.
You would think. But what I will say, though, is, and I understand why your parents kind of insulated you. But kudos to you to dig and to ask, to find out, because I think sometimes we should share our history. How else are we going to know about how things happen if we don't share them with other people in the family to make sure that the history doesn't get lost?
This was personal for me.
I can tell.
And I knew that it's like the story is not as small and it's encapsulated as people have portrayed it over time. So when I retired from my real job as a TV news reporter, after 41 years of working, I said, I know there are little known, untold stories. And what we don't know are about the stories that happen to real people. There are not enough of those stories being told. And so I went and talked to some people and found out some things that make the story interesting. And black people and white people, there were white allies, people who put their lives and reputations on the line and had white people stop talking to them and had to move their kids out of schools and things like that. My parents made friends with the Gratzes, Bob and Jeannie Gratz. Bob Gratz was a minister of a Lutheran church, a black Lutheran church, which they were friends with Rosa Parks. They supported the bus boycott and the Ku Klux Klan. Their car was vandalized. The Ku Klux Klan bombed their parsonage on several occasions. Fortunately, nobody was injured or killed. So there were, and I didn't know about it, white people who helped out. And then there were white people who talked to me who I guess were aging and felt like they wanted to get some things off their chest, like a woman whose father was the racist police commissioner. He was doing everything he could, Clyde Sellers, to get to prevent integration from happening on the buses. And she told me that her father was a racist, but that he was a product of his time, but that there were threats that came into their house, phone call threats. He moved her bed to the back of the house. He had police officers guard their house at night. She could hear them talking on the two-way on the radios. So
you said this is personal. What happened? What was that point in your life that says, I need to do the research and I need to document this, that ultimately ended up in this book?
Well, at one point, my father was a judge toward the end of his career, but he stopped working because my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And he decided he was going to write his own book, that he had stories that he wanted to tell, and he started writing it, but he didn't get far along and passed away. So it's like he had tossed down the gauntlet. I had to do something. I mean, that was my dad. So, I mean, I made it my story, but, you know, found out some other things. But I felt like I really had to tell a story.
And I know the amount of research that it has to take. How long did it take you to finish the book?
5 years.
Ooh.
It took a long time. So I retired. I went down to Montgomery, moved into my grandmother's old house, joined some civic organizations, told the people I was working on a book, can you help me if you know anybody who was connected to the boycott? And that's how I met Clyde Seller's daughter. She was at this breakfast meeting at a civic organization meeting, and she said, you're going to want to talk to me. My father was Clyde Sellers, and I thought, oh, my luck. So then I met white minister, Reverend Ray Watley. He had moved from Alabama. Well, actually, he was a minister of a church, a Methodist church, who got run out of town because he was preaching about the evils of segregation from his pulpit, and the Methodist official says, no, we will not have that. So I went to Asheville, North Carolina, where he was living in a senior retirement home, and talked to him. And, you know, he was one of those people, I want to get some of this stuff off my chest. I don't like the way they were doing things, and so that I talked to two people who lived down the street from Martin and Coretta King, and what they recalled, that these are black people, Vera Harris and Velda Montgomery. They were at home when a bomb was thrown on Martin Luther King's porch that night. And so their house shook and the windows were shattered too. So, you know, a lot of people got affected by things that were going on.
So 5 years.
Okay,
a lot of work.
Library of Congress had Rosa Parks papers. They were letting researchers go through the papers, and I was just going, oh my God, letters to her friends and relatives, and, you know, got the goosebumps when I was doing that.
What surprises did you find anything really surprised you that kind of knocked you back a minute?
You know, everything surprised me. The white ally part surprised me. My uncle was kind of schooled about how to be a really good lawyer by a white lawyer, Clifford.
Who mentored him?
Mentored him. Clifford
Wow.
Durr and his wife, Virginia Durr. They were people who were ostracized by the white community. You know, I mean, he
Because he was mentoring your uncle?
Yeah.
They got...
Well, also because Virginia Durr was having black people come to their house and having meetings, and, you know,
Oh, yeah,
people found out about that.
She got cut out.
That was
Yeah.
like, no, we cannot have that.
Yeah.
So, there was a lot of that kind of thing going on. More research, Alabama Department of Archives and History. They had oral records of people talking about what they knew, and they were hidden away. Who knew they were in there? The Department of Archives also had a collection of letters that nobody really knew anything about. I talked to a guy who was the director emeritus of the Archives Department, and he says, you know, you need to go and check this out, because these are letters that were written to the bus company and to the racist mayor at the time. And they went to the bus company, gave the box of letters to the family of the manager of the boycott, of the bus line, the Bagleys. And so I found the Bagleys, the wife, the daughter-in-law, and the son. And they talked to me about the letters. They were nasty, mean letters, hate-filled letters from people all around the country saying, we're going to give you some money so you can keep the bus company running, and you need to send those people back to Africa, and some other things that weren't very nice. So,
talk about history repeating itself. Just saying. Okay, so talk a little bit about the things that your father and uncle endured in this fight.
Well, threats. Everybody got them. My dad was arrested. You know, he was working, you know, he would pick the people up and, you know, take them to their jobs, and he would go to his own job. And he did some repairs of, you know, radios and TV sets and things like that. So he was out in the neighborhood sometime. Well, one day he was out in the neighborhood and he went home, and my mom said, "Oh, you missed the sheriff. The sheriff's deputy was just here. They came, they say they have a warrant for your arrest." So while Dad was home then, the car comes back around the corner, and the guy goes, "Yeah, I got this warrant for your arrest. You gotta come with me." So he gets in the car and sits in the back seat. He said they didn't put handcuffs on him, and he was shocked at how civilized the whole arrest event was. But they drove, and they were going to pick up the minister at Holt Street Baptist Church. And so they went to his house, and the wife said, "Oh no, you know, he's down at the church now." And so they go to the church, and they see the minister, and he says, "Well, I have a little work to do down here at the church. Can I just turn myself in later?" And they said yes. Well, so they get down to the jail, and it's like a big party or something, because they had done a roundup. They were just rounding up all these people who were activists in the boycott, and driving their cars and helping to, you know, drive the bus company out of business. And Ralph Abernathy was there, and they had somebody who was bailing everybody out, so nobody was actually in jail. But they arrested 89 people, including Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and my dad, and people who were arrested wore that like a badge of honor.
So to refresh everybody's memory, what ultimately brought the boycott to an end?
It was that lawsuit, Browder versus Gale, the one that Claudette Colvin was a plaintiff on. It went up through the court system, got appealed, went to the Supreme Court, which basically affirmed a lower court ruling that said that segregated seating was unconstitutional. And so it overturned segregated seating in Montgomery, and then after that everywhere. So
amazing. You know, I after our meeting and listening to you today, it just is so incredible how things foreshadow things that are happening today. You know, it takes me back to thinking about the Target boycott, how people resisted. And I imagine when you see all these things that are happening today, it probably just takes you right back to the stories of your family.
Well, you know, the boycott at Target, you know, are you still boycotting Target? Because I'm asking people. I've noticed that some people are
I don't go to Target. I don't even miss it anymore.
Stop it. You know, they don't have anything. That's like discretionary spending. You don't really need anything they have. And I resent what they're doing, so I'm never going back there.
Listen, let me tell you how I hold a grudge. Don't y'all judge. To this day, my car could be bone dry with no gas. I'm not going to Shell. They wouldn't divest from apartheid. By the time they did, I was done with them. So I have not ever gone to Shell since then.
My father always believed.
And I look at you sideways if I see somebody I know in Shell.
After the boycott, my father always insisted on patronizing black businesses, because one bad thing that happened as a result of the boycott was that a lot of black businesses went out of business, because we were so busy trying to go to the bigger stores that had more whatever it was, that nobody cared. You know, people who had small businesses where they might have taught their children and brought the family into it lost business.
No, I'm down with that. I mean, but Mr. Target is doing they'll be fine, or maybe not.
I don't know. They've lost a lot of money.
Oh, well, okay.
And they're doing a lot of advertising now to try to get people back in the stores.
I understand that.
But, you know,
I can't go back.
We're
I'm
done.
sorry.
We're done with them.
I can't. My sister is here, and she was in Target like every day, weren't you? She used to be. I mean, like every day.
I don't go there.
And she has not been back. And don't miss it. But it's just, I just think it's interesting how history works.
We learn from history, don't we?
Yeah. If you pay attention to what history says.
It can sometimes, well, we have a complicated history. There's the good and the bad. You can't ignore the ugliness and the realities of slavery and, white police brutality and lynchings and things like that, but we can learn from the bad chapters, the dark chapters.
Okay. Well, okay. I get a little sad because I can't. Marcia's a broadcaster. You're a broadcaster, and so our life has always been watching news. And so I would watch news all the time. I'd have news on in my car with Sirius. I was always watching and listening to the news. I just felt like I had to know. Anymore, it's just very hard to watch the news because it's just awful. It's just hard.
I don't envy the people who are having to cover the news now.
Oh my God. We mean the journalists who are under attack?
Yeah. I mean, what happened to a free press being the cornerstone of our democracy? I don't know.
I just wish your dad and your uncle were here.
Well, my uncle is here.
I know, but
he's 95, and let me tell you what he's doing.
I'm greedy. I'm talking about here.
Oh, right here.
So that we can ask them. I mean, because I when I watch the news, I just feel like our ancestors, they did so much, and here we are with books being banned and all kinds of, it's just awful.
Well, here's what Fred Gray is doing at his 95-year-old self. He has created the Fred Gray Institute for Human and Civil Rights. And he feels like, it's time for people to do something, and it's time to pass the mantle along. He's like, I did it in my day, now it's somebody else's turn. So he's got a national symposium that's coming up in Montgomery, March 12th and 13th, and they're bringing in, advocacy groups and scholars and lawyers and community activists to start talking about how we're supposed to respond to what's going on. What's the next move? What are the next steps?
Do you, I know you do, but have other people taken advantage of the fact that your uncle is still here and ask questions and be curious, and he's just like a walking library?
Yeah, they go to him all the time, and he's on TV constantly, and he's accepting honorary doctorate degrees.
I love that.
And he's still giving speeches and talking about what happened.
He is not.
In the Montgomery Bus Boycott, he represented the Tuskegee syphilis victims.
Yeah.
He's had a long, amazing career, which got him the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Amen.
So,
when did what president gave him that?
Under Biden.
Okay.
It happened under Biden in 2022, I believe it was.
Oh, was he able to go?
Yeah, I went too.
Did you? Listen, I don't blame you. I wish we would have been sisters then. Mm-hmm. I would have been trying to go with you. Mm-hmm. So I just have to ask you one quick question, and then we'll get to your questions.
Another quick question.
I understand what you said about Claudette and the fact that she got pregnant, which is why she wasn't the face of it. But is she in books? Do we know about her?
Yes.
Did y'all know about her? Yeah. Okay.
Well, people are starting to learn about her. When she was an adult, there was a children's book written about her.
Okay.
And then she has a new children's book that came out maybe last year or the year before. Okay. Something like "I Want My Freedom Now." Mm-hmm. "I Want Freedom Now," I think is the name of the book. That's
awesome. Mm-hmm. You want people to get their roses. People
are starting to learn because she she stayed out of the public limelight for a very long time, and I had to beg her for an interview for several years, and she finally said, okay. A few years ago, what year was it, 2023, she decided that she wanted people to know about her and that she wanted to have her childhood juvenile record expunged.
Good for her.
So she was convicted of assault against a police officer, because she was kicking and screaming when they dragged her off the bus.
Because she was 15?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
just saying,
Yeah.
So she went down to a family court in Montgomery and petitioned to have that record expunged. And an African-American family court judge cleared her record.
Amen. Amen. So this might be a hard question, but maybe not. When you think about your amazing family history, can you put into words the legacy that your family will always leave this country?
That is a difficult question, isn't it?
You mean I got one on you?
Well, you know what? Look what they did. And people are, I want people to know who my dad was, because I'm sure none of you knew that story about Hilliard Brooks and the big protest after that to try to get people registered to vote. I am working on getting a historical marker for my dad in Montgomery. And so
that should be a slam dunk.
That should be happening sometime this year. And so I'm proud of that. He has been inducted into his law school's Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And I didn't tell you why I ended up in Cleveland is because we were in Alabama when he wanted to go to law school after the bus boycott. And, people of our persuasion were not admitted into law schools in Alabama at the time because it was against the law. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so we were displaced refugees in our own country. He had to uproot the whole family and move us so he could go to law school in Cleveland.
Okay.
And the plan really was for him to go to law school and come back, because my uncle had done the same thing, mm-hmm. gone to Ohio, gotten a degree, and became a lawyer in Alabama. He was going to go back and practice law with my uncle, who was desegregating everything that needed desegregating in the state. But somehow he couldn't pass the bar in Alabama.
Somehow.
He could pass the bar in Ohio, but not in Alabama.
Okay.
But discrimination didn't stop at the Mason-Dixon line.
That's right.
And so he had a busy career practicing fair housing and civil rights and poverty law in Cleveland.
So as I mentioned, there's a lot in the news that's not good news. What gives you hope?
Young people. I was talking to some, are they still here? The young people I was talking to earlier today. They give me hope because they want a better life and a better America. And that is always the case. At every generation, when I was a kid and in school and protesting things, we were protesting the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. We were protesting when I was at Ohio University to get Black studies classes on campus and Black professors. And so it's the young people who are the ones who are usually out there and marching and going to make a difference. So, I had my turn. It's your turn now.
Time to step up. Okay.
Right.
I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm old too. So it's Nicole. It's Nicole. Nicole is executive director of the Miami Valley Urban League. She's young. She's going to help lead that charge. Carlos, you're not out of it.
And my book. I'm using the book. This is my contribution to the cause. I'm continuing the story and hope people can take some lessons from it.
And what I'll say is we should be grateful for your book. And this is why we have to continue to celebrate library access. It's so important. And fight against banned books. There's the most beautiful books that have been banned. I mean, who has the audacity to ban anything written by Toni Morrison? It just egregious.
Yeah.
But thank you, because we have to tell our own stories.